Hello, class. So I was wondering if you guys like playing games, and more specifically, board games. These are games that you play at a table. You might have played them with family or with friends. Um, yeah, so one very popular board game is called Clue. This is a game where all the players try to solve a murder mystery. So we're going to play a version of this game a little bit later on in the lesson. So this game has to do with a murder mystery. Do you guys remember our lesson that we had recently about a murder mystery? Can anybody tell me who the victim was or who got murdered? Yeah, that's right. Mr. Meyer. And can anybody tell me what room Mr. Meyer was murdered in? Yeah, in the bathroom. Very good. So, what about the suspects? You guys remember what that word is? Suspects. It's the person who is being investigated, or who they think did the crime. Yeah, Mrs. Meyer. Or maybe Mrs. Meyer's boyfriend. Yeah, very good. What about some clues that were left at the scene? Clues are things that show who might have done it. Things that were left behind at the crime scene. Let me pull up a picture of the crime scene for you guys to see. Yeah, so there's Mr. Meyer in the bathroom. Why don't you guys, in pairs, talk to each other and come up with a couple of clues that might show who did the crime. Alright, so some clues. What do you guys think? Yeah, so the footprints. You can see somebody left on the ground. Or what else? Yeah, so the door of the shower there in the corner was left open. Okay, so what about weapons? Weapons, these are something you hold and use to hurt someone with. What might have been the murder weapon? Yeah, the soap. So you have the soap there on the ground. Or maybe the scale in the corner. It's a heavy object. It's a heavy thing that you could use to hit someone with. Yeah. Yeah. So, talking about murder mysteries like this there's a lot of things to know, things that you do know, things that you don't know. And when we're talking about those sorts of things, you can use what is called the passive voice. So an example of a sentence in the passive voice and not in the passive voice. Not in the passive voice, we would say, someone killed Mr. Meyer. In the passive voice, we would say, Mr. Meyer was killed. So, with that first sentence, someone killed Mr. Meyer, our lack of knowledge, or that we don't know who killed Mr. Meyer, is shown by the word someone. Someone means that we know a person killed Mr. Meyer, but we don't know who that person is. So with the passive voice, we would say, Mr. Meyer was killed. And that same lack of knowledge is shown. But we don't use the word someone. With the passive voice, all we know is that Mr. Meyer was killed. That sentence doesn't say anything about who did it. We just know about the victim, Mr. Meyer. So the way the passive voice works is, so here's our first sentence. Someone killed Mr. Meyer. Someone is the subject of the sentence. They're the one doing the action. And they're doing it to Mr. Meyer, who is the object. In the passive voice, the object becomes the subject of the sentence. The object becomes the focus. So, in the passive voice, we would say Mr. Meyer was killed. Mr. Meyer is doing the action in the sense that he is the one who was killed. So, this verb here, to be, is very, very important when we're talking about the passive voice. It's a good indicator that the passive voice is being used. If you have to be conjugated as was or were, and then you have a verb in its past participle form, which you can see most often by the ed ending. So you see here in our original sentence, well actually, in our original sentence we also have that ed ending. So that's a bit tricky. Past participle and past verbs can have the same ending. That's important to keep in mind. But when we're in the passive voice, this second word here in the with the verb is going to be a past participle. And the other one is going to be your to be. So let's look at another sentence on the same topic. This one's a bit longer. So this one is not in the passive voice. And I'm going to ask you guys to, once I explain this, get into groups and put it into the passive voice. Write it down. So our sentence is, someone hit Mr. Meyer over the head with the scales in the bathroom. So this might seem a little bit daunting. Or difficult. Daunting means difficult or hard. This one might be a little bit hard. But it's simpler than you might think. Because I'll help you. So someone hit Mr. Meyer over the head with the scales in the bathroom. Over the head is a prepositional phrase. With the scales is also a prepositional phrase. And in the bathroom is another prepositional phrase. Prepositional phrases with the passive voice, we're not gonna do anything to them. They're gonna stay the same and be attached to the sentence in pretty much the same way as they are here. So the main part of the sentence that you're working with is someone hit Mr. Meyer. So I want you guys to figure out which of these words are the subject and which one is the object, and then I want you to put it in the passive voice with that to be construction. Alright, now get into groups and we'll go over it.